Warning, warning. This is a global ice out. Global ice out. Testing the right speaker. Right. Testing the left speaker. Left. Sound successfully recovered. Swan Commander. Connected. And now, the countdown has begun. And now, are you ready for a journey that goes beyond the norms? The Federal Prospects Hockey League just celebrated its 15th anniversary. With a footprint and fan base rapidly expanding, Swan Hockey is now bringing you behind the scenes. Beyond what you see at games. Beyond the arenas. Beyond the crowds. This is FPHL, Beyond the Glass. Beyond the Glass.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of FPHL Beyond the Glass. I'm your host, Eric Swanek, Swan Commander on social media. This is the official podcast of the Federal Prospects Hockey League, and we've got a couple very different episodes for you coming up. This is gonna be a two-part series. This will be part one. We're gonna dive into the leaders of the FPHL, Commissioner Don Kirnan and Vice Commissioner Andrew Sarge Richards. We're gonna dive into their hockey background pre-FPHL, their experiences, what led them to the creation of the FPHL. And then part two, we're going to dive into getting the FPHL going and where it is today and what their goal is for the future. We're going to sit down with the commissioner and the vice commissioner now. Let's go. Don, Sarge, how we doing?
Good. Very
Just
good.
another day in paradise.
Yep. I hear you. So this episode, we want to dive into your guys' background. So obviously, you guys bring a strong dynamic to the business side of the league, but also the hockey side. You guys are both deeply ingrained in the hockey community, in the sport on a whole, going back many, many years. I actually played in one of your leagues, Sarge, when I was younger. And
I know.
But
the CHA.
Yep.
Yeah.
CHA. Yep. And but yeah, let's start. Don, why don't you bring us back to the beginning here in terms of the business side of hockey for you, maybe on like the player development side and everything in Central New York.
Sure. I was just like a normal parent. When my kids decided they wanted to play hockey, my background is I played, but there wasn't much opportunity in Central New York when I played. And I saw that the career path was not really put together properly in Central New York. My parents were from the Montreal area, and I knew what was happening in Canada, and I realized that in Central New York, what they were doing was the wrong thing. So when my kids were like 7 or 8 years old, I got on the board in Syracuse, and they appointed me in charge of the coaches because nobody else wanted to do it. And the first thing I did was we looked into forming a junior team, which nobody ever heard of in Syracuse before. And this was, I think, 1985, and so we formed the youth hockey group. Said we're going to do a junior team. We had 100 kids try out, and the president of the board, the youth board, decided after the tryout that he didn't want to do the team. So my father and I decided to do the team, and we renamed the team the Syracuse Stars. A year later, the youth hockey group wanted to use the name because it was so successful. But what happened in Central New York was players were going to a certain point, and the people that ran New York State hockey at that particular time that were there were important national people, John Dottie and Bob Allen. Their vision for New York State was to direct all youth hockey players to high school hockey. And most of the players that were very, very good reached a certain point, and then they didn't go on. So I knew why they didn't go on, because there was a whole other avenue for players to go to that nobody else in upstate New York knew that. So I directed people to play junior hockey, and unbeknownst to me, there was a person in Iowa, Dave Tyler, that basically was in charge of junior hockey for the United States for a long, long time. Very powerful person in USA Hockey. And he recognized that someone in New York State was trying to push guys to junior hockey. So he gave me opportunities to develop players. And what we did was we created a spring program. We did other things to try to give players an opportunity. And we became the place to play in Central New York with all the associations. And the junior team went its course for a few years. And then the league that they were in fell apart because it was run out of Buffalo and Rochester. So it got to the point where I had to set up a league, and out of nothing, and we had 5 teams that started, all in New York State. And we started a team for players that were in junior hockey. And over the years, it grew to 8 teams, then to 10 teams. And then when we merged, I think about 10 years ago with the NCDC, we merged with 32 teams. All of this was done on a volunteer basis by myself. And the league was produced a lot of players. And as part of running the league, I ran 6 national tournaments. And one of the things that I did the junior B level with this particular league.
This was the Empire Junior Hockey League, right?
Correct. It was the Empire Junior League, and I was handing out the trophies with a guy named Glenn Hefferon, that's the head of the USHL right now. And what I noticed was, I handed out the trophy to Jack Eichel. He was 14 years old, that won the national championship. Because we had, some of the younger players we allowed to play junior B. And the players that won the junior B national title were just as proud and just as happy as guys that won at a higher level. So it showed me that there was a place for players that perhaps wouldn't make it to the highest level, wouldn't make it to what the NHL level. And we had success. We had, a dozen guys make it to the NHL. We had 24 guys probably drafted from the Syracuse program that we started. And it's, so, we were with kids that started at 6 or 7 years old and walking with them, while they were getting drafted, at 18 years old at the draft sites was a great honor and a great, fun thing to be. But, as both Sarge and myself, we understood that there were other players that didn't make it, and they were important too. And one of the things that we thought was very important was to give other kids an opportunity to enjoy the sport, have fans cheer for them, and give them an opportunity that maybe wasn't there for them before.
Yeah, and before we drift over into that in terms of that second level of player, How many guys did you work with that are, that have played in the NHL or in the NHL now?
Well, the last players, maybe Al Tuck, that played, for one of our programs, and we have Jake Farabee played, and I think there's one or two others. Our glory days was right around the early 2000s, where we had 8 players any given night playing, which out of Syracuse was a little over 1% of the NHL was actually made up of Syracuse players, which was our glory days. And we had the Hockey News publication came out with where's the 10 best places. They didn't rate them 1 to 10, but we were definitely rated as one of the top 10. Whether we were 1 or 10, we don't know. They didn't say that. But we had players from all over the country, all over the world. Actually, I actually had players from Russia coming to Syracuse to play. So it was a scenario where agents were hanging around, and everything that we saw was happening in the hockey world was being staged there. And we did some unique things that advance our players, but there's been maybe 3,000 or 4,000 games played in the NHL from former Syracuse Stars players. And we had some great teams. We were the first team to win the Quebec World Tournament, 1995. And we're mentioned the congressional record was a big thing in the whole country. We've won national tournaments out of there. We won 2 national U19 tournaments that we did with, and we had a player that was 15 years old that won the nationals, ended up making the Olympic team at 16 years old. So we had a lot of great teams, a lot of great players come through, many Olympic players. So it was really an opportunity to see what the very, very top level of hockey is. And as you look back on it, 1 decade, 2 decades, 3 decades back, you try to see, okay, we know the guys that made it, who didn't make it, why didn't make it, and what can we do to help the guys that did make it. And sometimes it's a little thing that happened. One story that's one of my favorite players was a player that made the national team at 16 and 17 years old in Syracuse. And he had played in our program since he was 7 years old. And
yeah, that's awesome.
And he was he wanted to, he had an opportunity to go to Harvard, and the Cornell coach, which I knew, said, he's an offensive defenseman, go to Cornell instead. And he opted to go to Harvard, and he didn't get drafted in the NHL, but he was good enough to make the 16th and 17th. The 5 players on his Bantam team were drafted in the NHL, and he was as good as any of those, but he wasn't able to be included. So sometimes a decision, and it's very hard to talk to a player and say, don't go to Harvard. Go somewhere else. I mean, but it's one of those things where all along the way, players make decisions and they take a direction, and sometimes it works out for them, sometimes it doesn't. But everybody gains experience from that. And but we were in that field, and we were talking with agents, and I was at the NHL draft several times and talking to really the best agents in the world, and you see what they're looking for and what what career path that people take, and there's, for every guy that makes it, there's 100 guys that didn't make it. So it's so you learn along the way, and you try to make corrections, and you give the best advice you can. Sarge can attest to this, that most of the people have been doing it, and then Eric, you're in the business. They've been doing it for 2 or 3 months, so they know more than you do, and sometimes they don't.
Yeah. Yeah, Sarge, let's take it over to you. So give us, give everybody your background and, and before you do, one thing I think is really cool, and I've said it before on this show is, we have the Empire Division and the Continental Division. Those were the names of your leagues, right, Don? We already spoke about the Empire Junior Hockey League. Sarge, you had the Continental Hockey Association. So I think it's cool how those two names have, withstood the test of time here.
Yeah, I'm kind of proud that those names will carry on for a long time. I listened to Don there, and of course, I've known Don for 30, 40 years now, I guess, but a lot of parallels in our stories, and then there's some unique differences. My parents weren't from Montreal, but at any rate, when the original six decided to expand and bring in the second six, hockey became pretty popular in Philadelphia area overnight. They had minor league teams with the Ramblers and other teams prior to that, and the WHA team later. But that was the impetus of the growth of hockey in Philadelphia, Delaware Valley area. And the Flyers were a very progressive organization. They had a young man at the time named Andy Abramson who worked for them. He was, I believe, a teenager. If not, he was in his early 20s. The Flyers decided to host a high school championship in Philadelphia called the Flyers Cup. Eventually, the Penguins joined in as well with the Penguins Cup, and that led to state championships at high school level. And I was the first high school president to commit to that concept with the Suburban High School Hockey League. Back then, I served as the president for, 7, 8 years at the time. I was fortunate with my two sons. We had started a program called the Bucksmont Glaciers. It lasted for 35 years and something happened, but it was great while it was there. And we owned 3 pro shops at the time, my wife and I, even though I was full-time in the military. So I was involved from the beginning, and my wife, Joanne, took our boys to the Little Flyers tryouts, not knowing very much at the time, not knowing what to expect. Lo and behold, she came back and said they both were accepted on their respective levels to play for the Little Flyers, which put me in a difficult position because I was involved heavily with the youth hockey program we started at the local rink. It caused me some difficulties financially. People didn't understand that I had to do what was right for my kids, and they boycotted my pro shops and stuff like that. But that was their right, and it was a difficult decision, but the best decision for our family. The Little Flyers program, which I later became a coach of, which exposed me probably prematurely to such great players. Players came from Long Island, players came from Washington, D.C. area, and they traveled to one practice a week because there weren't very many facilities at the time, with the wire cage arena, et cetera, to play on a high level, what would be considered AAA level kind of program today. Because of that program, we had the kind of players that demanded a tough schedule. So we went independent for a year or two, and that was before Title IX. So all the colleges had JV programs, and of course you had the New England prep schools as well as certain local ones like Lawrenceville in New Jersey and the Hill School in Pennsylvania, and that was our schedule. I mean, we probably played 6 home games all year, And I know the Pee Wee team that our youngest was on at the time played 110 games, most of them on the road. But because of that, we played in every college venue in the New England area, played the Young Americans and Little Caesars and CompuWare and Team Illinois and all these prestigious organizations. So when you have a schedule like that, you're being introduced to the elite of the game as far as coaching. And I wasn't really probably deserving at the time, but I was appreciative of it. And I met some of the greatest names in the game. And then, of course, Hockey East was big then, and we played all their JV teams. So you met all those guys, as well as like Ron Mason from Michigan State, etc. So you were hobnobbing with the influential people in the game, and you had opportunities to sit with them and talk with them and learn from them, which all, we're all a byproduct of our experiences. And I got those opportunities not because of me, but because of my players and because the organization. In the interim, I became, like I said, the president of the high school league. I coached a team there for 30 years. When we started, there were 2 high schools in Central Bucks. And at the time, you were allowed to combine them. And we had an East and West team. Eventually, the leagues went pure. So you had to make a choice. When they made that decision, the majority of the players on the team were from East. So we had to go with CB East. And I wound up coaching the program for 30 years. Had a lot of great experiences, a lot of great memories. We started the youth organization, as I said, the Central Bucksmont Glaciers. We also started the Bucks County Generals junior team. One of my partners was Ed Gilbert, who was a former NHL player, played for the Kansas City Scouts, was assistant captain, played for the Pittsburgh Penguins, relocated to our area. I got in touch with him, and we got involved. He helped me with my high school, and then we owned the junior team together, and the Generals program. And you learn from them. I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot about parents. When you have an NHL guy working with you, right away people gravitate to that guy because of his experience. I learned right away that he was the go-to guy until he didn't play your son. Then he was no better than me. Right. So I learned that lesson early, that the important thing with coaching, in my mind, is the player is everything's got to be directed to the player, and you got to make tough decisions. Some people need a pat on the back. Some people need a kick in the butt. All right, that's the hard part about coaching, is to know when to kick the guy in the butt and know when to pat the other guy on the back, and how to utilize your players effectively and develop them all together, which, takes time. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing for 4 or 5 years at all. I remember when I finally had self-confidence that I really believe I know what I'm doing now. And I can explain it if you have a question, Mr. Jones or Mr. Smith. So that was an interesting transition for me. I've also been involved with the Keystone State Games program since inception, which, they might have tried to get rid of me, but they haven't yet. And it's over 40 years now that I've been with the program. They bestowed an honor upon me that I'm very thankful of. I was the first coach in any sport to be elected into the Keystone State Games Hall of Fame, which really was
awesome.
a surprise as well, but it was quite an honor. I learned a lot from those folks, a lot of great players, a lot of great people. I learned that, when you commit to something, you commit and you do your best. Somewhere along the line, I said, hey, we should start recognizing some people who have been with our program for a period of time. And the staff said to me, well, why don't you draw up some criteria and bring it back and we'll consider it. So I did. I don't remember all the criteria, but I remember one was you had to be at least involved for 10 years. So they finally adopted it. And lo and behold, again, surprise, I was the first recipient of the award I designed. So that was a shock. And but now we have maybe 20 some or 25, whatever, members of this club, and I've been able to present. They give you a jacket, a blue jacket, the colors of the state, blue and gold. We call them the Blue Jacket Club. So it's the Gold Medal Volunteer Awards, what it's really called. But those things, there are so many people. With the CHA that you played in, I started that very similar to Don. I started with 5 teams and wound up with 32. It's ironic, but it's what happened. But we were the first league in the history of USA Hockey to have tiered level junior program. We had 3 levels at the time. We had the Premier and the Elite, and we had what we called the MAD division, Middle Atlantic Developmental Division. All right. And, it was so right and needed, and it hurt USA Hockey as some affiliates because they were losing Bantam and midget players to the tiered junior program because it was less expensive and you got far more for your money. So it forced USA Hockey to change their rules. And I don't know any other sport that's done it yet, but everybody's U20 is junior. So I said, well, 15 is under 20. I can have a 15, 16-year-old junior program, a 17 and 18-year-old junior program, and a 19 and 20-year-old junior program. And I did. But it forced them to change their rules to not allow 15-year-olds to play junior. Which
I was
Don and I both thought, but we didn't win that particular battle. But hockey's been something we've done for a long time and learned a lot. And we're still learning every day. We're dealing with some people today on a daily basis. Don came up with this idea. We all sat down, 17 years ago in Syracuse with, a couple local teams, one in Connecticut, Danbury, and the others all in New York. None of them, Danbury was the biggest arena we had. And now we're in 9,000 seat arenas. We have 14, 15, 16 teams. We're all over the place. We're going to draw 1 million fans this year. We have people that are, generating $4 million in annual revenue with their team. All this is transpired by some dreaming and some very good luck and some really lot of hard work. But it's there now. And, Don deserves all the credit as serving as the commissioner and taking a lot of heat over the time. I have the great title of vice commissioner, which means whatever Don don't want to do, I do, right? And I try to do it the best I can. I love every minute. I don't like certain things that happen, but I love what we've accomplished. And how many fans get to see professional hockey on a weekly basis because of a vision that Don came up with.
Yeah, and Don, with that said, I want to throw it back to you. So 17 years ago, you come up with this idea for the league. How'd you arrive at it? We're going to pause here for part 1. Let's do our proof of attendance token code for watching this episode. The proof of attendance token code is beginnings. Enter the code at swanhockey.com on the podcast page, and you will be eligible to receive your proof of attendance token for watching this episode. The cutoff will be 9 p.m. Eastern, the night that this airs, Wednesday, and our magic number is 5. Collect 5 or more of these proof of attendance tokens, and you will have access to the member-only chat in Club Fed in the Swan Hockey Discord server. That's going to do it for this episode. We'll be back next week with part 2, and until then, I'll see you guys soon.
Thank you for being the best part of this episode of FPHL Beyond the Glass by Swan Hockey. We will see you soon.